Hey, what it do? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're just having a great day. So I'm still on cloud 9 from the last video. The baler making hay. It was just a rad day when we had that thing working. So I'm hoping that we can carry that same momentum into this video. You guys remember the old John Deere brush cutter and how we ran into a couple issues. It had shorted me one seal, so I had to go back and order that. And then upon further investigation, the output shaft has some serious scoring in it. So we're gonna try and get that lathe working today, and if it does, we are going to try and machine this down a little bit to try and get rid of this scoring so we don't just trash the new seals. So I have no idea how it's gonna go, but it should be somewhat interesting. And as always, there may be some other stuff that sneaks its way in this video, but hope you guys enjoy. Let's go ahead and jump on into it, and let's roll.
Calling all units. We have 211 at 454 South Main. Backup needed.
I came from the mud.
I'm gonna go ahead and swap out the top.
There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
I'm gonna go ahead and hit this with a file real quick. The green's cleaned out.
Hope they won't shoot me down soon.
All right, you guys can see that both blades are flipped out. That's what we want. Let's go ahead and turn the PTO on. So I think I've talked about this before, but the first major problem with that lathe is that it runs off a 3-phase, and out here in the sticks, we don't have it. And I've actually talked to SDG&E about what it would take to get out here, and I keep going back and forth on whether or not it's worth it. So having said that, we do have a temporary solution, and that is the old military generator. You guys can tell that it is missing the batteries. And the reason behind that is that we actually had a fire start up about 3 or 4 miles that way. So I raced home and instantly went into fire prepper mode. I went to go start the diesel well pump and the battery was dead. And that's why this has no more batteries. So now that we're coming into summertime and obviously fire season's already here, that's something that needs to be ready to go at any minute. So I did have to go buy some new batteries, but we're gonna go ahead and get this thing dragged around back. And we're gonna be doing some slight modifications to it. We are going to be opening up the panel behind here. We are going to be disconnecting all of this stuff. So basically what we're gonna be doing is wiring directly into the circuit breakers. If you guys open this up, it's not too hard to see. It's not gonna be very complicated. We're basically gonna unland the wires that go to the units up front and land some new wires that will then power the lathe. So that's what I've got in mind. We'll see if it actually works. I gotta go grab the 299 so we can actually get this thing dragged around and somewhat in place. All right, well, we got the generator tucked back up underneath the hay barn. This thing sure takes up a lot of space. I'm really contemplating just removing the whole thing and building a little pedestal for the generator to sit on right there. I don't think we need all of this just for that, but that's a project for another day. So first things first, let's grab the new batteries. These are not fancy batteries by any means. So for this particular application, I think these things are gonna be perfect. They're a marine battery, which if I remember correctly, it just means they have thicker lead plates, which allows for more discharge. And when it happens, it's not so detrimental to the battery. Something along those lines. But let's go ahead and get these put in, and then we'll get this generator fired back up. Make sure everything's working correctly before we start disconnecting stuff and adding stuff. And all right, let's go ahead and give her a smidge of preheat. Not much, just a little bit. Everything's looking pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and let it warm up a little bit. Get some oil flowing through there. See if I can figure out where that one injector is still leaking from. So just stumbled across some more good news. Originally, I thought we were leaking pretty good out of there, but it turns out it was just leaking out of this. It used to have just one of these little squeeze clamps on there, and anytime you would wiggle this, the diesel would come out. So I'm kind of thinking that might be like the same story up here, because you guys can see that we do have a little bit of leakage right there. And since I don't really have a use for that second clamp, we went ahead and doubled it up here, just to maybe give us a little bit better of a seal too. So I think we're good as far as leaks go on this thing. And I'm gonna go ahead and fire back up, wiggle some stuff around and make sure that nothing else is leaking. And that might be it. I think this generator's 100% after that. So I've been looking behind the panel right here, and I'm not 100% sure if these are the line or the load side. So we're gonna go ahead and start up the generator. I got my meter right here. And we're gonna start poking around, seeing what's what. Let's see if it'll start with this lid off. All right, we'll go ahead and engage the generator, and we'll do CB5. Okay, so those should have voltage right now. All right, well, after a couple quick phone calls with my buddy Josh, consulting over a couple things, I think we have that set up to where it's gonna work. And we're just gonna pretend it's just this nice, beautiful wiring job. Right now, it's just for testing purposes. And then if everything does work nicely, I'll go ahead and pick up all the disconnect switches. We'll put like nice J boxes going in and out of the building. We'll hard pipe everything. It'll look great. But for now, we're just trying to see if it's actually gonna turn the lathe. We've already got it wired up inside with wire nuts. We're gonna go ahead and tape it up a little bit, and then it's time to turn the thing on. All right, well, as far as having everything hooked up, we're about as far as we can get without turning the generator on. We do have this thing plugged in, which just runs off a 110. It's plugged into the wall over there, and I don't even know what it does. It's made by Sargon Industries. You turn it on the back, and it just flashes a bunch of 8s at you. So we're gonna go ahead and turn this back off. Made in USA. It's a good sign. Looks like we got both sides of the world, made in China. All right, so we've got the generator sitting right at about 230. It's just a hair above 225, which is what that data plate on the back of the machine said. We've got it hooked up to this circuit breaker right here, so we're gonna go ahead and flip that. Hasn't popped yet, so that's a good sign. Go ahead and check all the legs. This one's at 230, 230, 230. Let's go inside and see what it does. All right, well, we'll see. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that on. We've got everything like pretty much as far down as they can go. Spindle speed's low. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. We're gonna flip a switch and see what happens right now. So far, nothing. Let's go ahead and turn that back off. Let's see what that does. Oh. I heard noises. There's no lights on this thing, so I don't know if it's on or not. All right, well, I stepped on this, and it started making some clicking noises. And then as I push this, now it's doing something. You guys, there's so much to learn about this thing. The spindle jogging does make this move. You guys can see we got that going on. And I don't know if you're supposed to hold it in the entire time. I don't know how you would work. I don't know how to get this thing to stay locked on, because as soon as I let go, it doesn't go anywhere. So, oh, we got our coolant motor turning on. So that's kind of cool. But I don't know how to keep it on constantly. And this is a brake pedal right here. So you guys can see we get it going. As soon as I push that, it locks that down and quits the spindle jogging. Let go, here we go. Starts moving again. Then we'll go ahead and put it into high range. You guys will see the speed difference a little bit. A little bit faster. All right, so now we've got this thing full tilt boogie. We're gonna go ahead and get that spinning. That thing spins pretty fast. I don't think we're gonna need it that fast, but I gotta figure out how to get this thing to stay on. I don't get it. All right, well, that's enough goofing around because I literally have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm gonna go grab my neighbor real quick, who is very much more well-versed in these things than I am. But just the fact that this thing is working off of the generator in the back technically means that the CNC should be able to run off of the generator as well. I wanted to experiment on this one first. I would have been sad if this thing went up in smoke, but I would have been devastated if that thing got short-circuited and fried everything. All right, well, I just got back from my neighbor's house, talked to him a little bit about this machine. He can't come over today, but maybe tomorrow or the next day. So we're gonna go ahead and put this on the back burner a little bit. I'm super excited about it. We're gonna go ahead and disconnect it. And since we're kind of in the mode of working with power right now, we're gonna go ahead and do something that I've been kind of putting off because I'm extremely nervous to do it. Originally, the milling machine was not gonna be in today's video, but due to circumstances, I figured today's as good of a time as any to go ahead and see if that generator will power this. It's not gonna be a whole lot to do other than disconnecting the stuff right there and wiring it into this machine right here. Got my buddy Daniel on the phone right now. He's gonna start walking me through a couple things. Nope, it's on. I'm filming for the YouTube as we speak. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit cycle start because that's what I did last time and it started moving. So now cycle start. Oh. Yeah, it is. I just double checked that. The bed is, oh man. Yeah, the bed's moving right now. Woo! She lives. Oh my gosh. Oh boy.
In that direction until it'll hit those coordinates.
Okay.
So what you'd have to worry about is right now you're at 0.01 plus on the Z. If in any of the code it goes down below that, like, I don't know, I can't tell how far it is from the table, but however many inches from the table, if it drops down, say that's 6 inches, if it has a -6, then you got to be careful for the Z.
Oh, okay.
Right, so you see the lines coming up above it?
You guys, I'm beyond excited right now that the CNC milling machine is like actually working. That's a pretty big deal. And I was listening to the generator in the back when the thing would kick on. This thing didn't even skip a beat, just kept humming right along. So anyhow, I'm pretty much done for the day. We're gonna head home and have some burgers. But great day. And tomorrow when we come back up here, we'll go ahead and machine that shaft for the old brush cutter, and hopefully we can start getting that thing put back together. All right, well, while we wait for my neighbor to wake up, we're gonna go ahead and make some other repairs to this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the back wheel first. This is super easy to take off. You basically just remove that nut, take this bolt out, and the whole thing will drop out. I'll heat this up, we'll bend it back out. Things heavier than you would expect. You ready to see some stuff get hot? Yeah. Okay.
Whoa. Where did you feel this? Wonderful.
All right, so things are looking pretty good with this. Obviously we have this side which is super worn out. I'm gonna fix that hole, but you guys can see once we bring this up like that, it sits much more square than it used to be. Not 100% perfect, but it is way better than it was. So my battery's pretty close to dead, but what we're gonna try and do right now is fill that in with weld, and then I'll re-drill the hole to kind of true it up. I'm not gonna fill in the whole thing. We're just gonna kind of go to where that little odd shape is, and then we'll go ahead and clean everything up. All right, so you guys can see that we got it filled back in pretty good. The holes are lining up halfway decent, and I'm not even gonna have to drill that much out. It's pretty much just gonna be smoothing out that hole. All right, so you guys can see that we got it drilled out a little bit. The holes are lining up pretty good, not looking too shabby. I'm gonna go ahead and drop the wheel in there, see how everything lines up. Then I'm just gonna let it sit, because it's still pretty hot. And I don't really feel like touching that. So let's go ahead and see how the wheel actually looks once it's all in there and all tightened up. Oh, I should have moved this welder. All right, so like I said, it's not perfect, but it's way better than it was. We got the wheel in there, it spins, doesn't rub on anything. This side looks like it could have been bent a little bit more this way. But for today, I think we're gonna be way better off than we were before. So is it something small?
It basically what it'll do, it'll have a shaft on it.
Okay.
And that's what'll go in, you could pop this out, it might go right into the tail, this is the tail stock right here. This is on a taper, so you should just have to turn this back and then this will pop out. Okay, so what we're looking for, we'll have this taper on one end. It might have a little collar on it. It'll turn, it'll rotate.
Okay. But it needs to have a point on it?
It'll have a point. And that point, see, one end goes in your chuck, and it could be either end because they both have little tapers on them, see?
Oh, okay.
So the point will go in here and give us some support. We don't need much. We can actually do it. We could do it without it, but it's better if you've got it. Because all we need is something to support it. Where's your key? There should be like a T-handle with a square on the end to turn the chuck. That's for working the chuck. Yeah, perfect. Usually you'll want to keep this close by.
Do one of these like adjust them in and out?
Yeah, that's what all these, 3 of them.
Oh, all 3 of them do the same thing?
Yeah, exactly. And normally you hit at least 2 of them. And we're not doing any cutting. We're not putting any real pressure on it. We're just turning it.
Okay.
So that way, if you do it by hand, then you take the chance of having flat spots in it.
On those?
Yeah, never move those while it's turning. Never move it while it's turning.
Well, sometimes it can't. See how it's stuck?
Yeah, so that's why
that's what. Then you jog it.
That's why you jog.
Just
yeah.
go.
There you go. Yeah. That's the idea.
But I don't.
There's just a bunch of gears in there. They got to line up like a non-synchro trans. Just hold it once. For what we're gonna do, all you gotta do is hold it. But this will just take a few minutes to clean this up.
Okay. You want to change the speed, or is that good speed?
That's a good speed.
All right, ready?
Yeah, go ahead. Now you want to watch your hands around these coming around.
Okay.
They'll hurt. Be especially careful of any loose clothing, because if it catches, it'll wrap you up in there. It'll hurt. You'll go to the hospital. Go ahead, keep running. Okay, hold it on again. Okay, spinner. Little rudimentary stuff like this is good enough. So what makes this work easy is put this in the freezer and this in the oven.
Okay.
But I'd still
Deburr that guy a little bit.
yeah, take a little of the rough stuff off.
Okay.
Where's that other little file? But just to get the rough stuff off.
All right, so there's been a slight change of plans. This is the input shaft. It's got a couple imperfections too, but I have to press this bearing off because it's not coming off very easily. And to do that, we're gonna be using the shop press real quick. It shouldn't take me too long. I'm gonna go ahead and just get this thing set up. Or we could probably just lift it up a notch. We got a real close up for you guys. All right. There we go. She's free. Ooh, that one looks pretty nice. Not a whole lot of scarring on that one. So I'm slightly more educated on how to use these things than I was this morning. I still got a long ways to go, but learned a lot about this stuff. Learned about this guy right here. But pretty much all we're gonna be using today is this guy right here. And what we need to work on now is this part right here. That's pretty boogered up. We're gonna try and clean that up a little bit. And to do that, we're gonna go ahead and slide this in there. And then you have this chuck key right here, which when you turn this, basically it clamps all 3 of these jaws down in unison. And then pretty much what you're gonna wanna do, you'll go ahead and tighten it up with the chuck key. You'll hit this one, and you wanna hit at least one more to make sure that it's nice and snug. If you're gonna be doing like serious machining, I guess you wanna tighten it from all 3 just to like triple check uniformity. So we're gonna go ahead and tighten all these up. Then I gotta go start the generator up out back to power this thing up again. And then we're going to be working on this little part that's boogered up right here. All right, guys, so I just noticed something as I was working on this shaft right here. This whole assembly is slowly making its way towards this right here. Check it out. So we're gonna go ahead and hit the jog button again. You guys can see that it is slowly making its way. We got those 2 rods spinning down there. So I got a long ways to go with this machine. I don't even know how to like engage that or reverse it or do anything. I'm pretty sure it has to do with those levers right there, but for now, we're just gonna go ahead and rotate this thing on back because I'm not sure what I'm doing quite yet, and I still got a little bit more that I want to take off of that. All right, well, I think we are officially to the putting back together phases of the brush cutter. Now I gotta remember how I did everything. So, what do you think? Are you gonna be able to remember how to put this back together?
I hope so.
Me too. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys what you do not want to see on a bearing race, and that is markings like that. Serious pitting, galling. This thing was not rotating very smooth. This one's even worse. Check that out. Those are just awful. Just a little bit of cleanup to do. There's some like old gasket material on top of this thing. I'm gonna hit it with a wire brush real quick. Let's go blow this thing. First up on the list, we are going to go ahead and drive in the very first new bearing race. And to do that, we are going to use my handy dandy driver set. That one is just slightly smaller. I think this will work great. Let's go ahead and get this thing set up. I'll probably use a shorter screw than that one. Go ahead and get this set up over there. Hopefully, ooh, got it dirty. Every time. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and explain something to you guys real quick. You guys can see that we have this end cap right here. So these shims right here basically control how far this end cap, which you guys can see has a raised edge right here, is going to be pushing down that race. Now the reason for those is to basically eliminate any end play, and you want to be able to place these exactly where they need to be. Now hopefully the tolerances on the bearings are pretty much the same so that it's going to be the same as when it came from factory. So I'm going to go ahead and put them on just how they were. This is the amount of shims that it had when I took it apart. And then we'll go ahead and install the second race, and we'll start checking for end play, seeing how much it moves back and forth. And we'll either take out, and I don't really have shims to add, so I'm hoping that's not the scenario. I'm hoping that it just is like the same amount of shims on both sides, and that it just works great. But we're gonna go ahead and get this side installed, and then I have to go ahead and start putting this guy all back together because it's gonna be coming in through that side. So right now the end cap just started hitting some resistance. You guys can see that we've still got a pretty good gap right there. And that's how much farther in it's gonna push that race that's right there. Right now this thing is not seated exactly where it needs to go. So as I tighten these things up, it's gonna go ahead and start pushing that race in little by little. And I'm basically just gonna move around in a circle, kind of bring it in very nice and uniform. I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to pick that up on camera, that it's moving in. It's gonna be ever so slight. We are just about there. It's getting pretty close on the outside right here. See how it's starting to snug up. There's not really a gap anymore. I'll probably give them like another 1/8 turn once we get it all assembled, or figure out what the actual torque spec is supposed to be on it. But you guys can see that the race is much farther in now, but it's still within where it needs to be. 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. I was trying to put it all back together and I was doing it incorrectly. So I had to take that cap back off. And I'll show you guys why real quick. So I was putting this shaft back in, and basically this gear has to be in here, and then you slide the shaft in, and you can't do that with the end cap on. So I had to disassemble everything, drop this back in there. I had that one snap ring to put on. So I think, oh, you know what guys? Still doing this wrong. I gotta do the bottom shaft first. So I'm gonna go ahead and set the camera down because obviously I can't think and film at the same time. We're just gonna set it up on a time lapse and see how this goes.
To all the doubters, to those who don't believe, this is the hour. You'll see that we'll make light as out of obstacles and stepping stones from roadblocks. Sleep over the lines that say we won't cross. We'll shake hands like they're nothing. They won't see us coming. Scale all of the walls they built to hold us. We may be invisible, but we'll be unmistakable. We may be invisible. They may be blind to me, just wait and see.
All right, guys, well, things are going pretty good. We got the bulk of it back together. You guys can see we got the drive shaft in there where it needs to be. It's spinning like it's supposed to. We got it filled up with gear oil. I'm gonna kind of let it sit overnight. As of right now, I do not see any leaks. I think we're looking pretty good. I think the machining that we did is gonna be okay. I just got done putting on like the hardest piece out of this whole scenario. That's this thing right here. It has these weird copper or bronze bushings. I did pick up an extra one just in case I needed them, but those are a pain in the butt to get on there. So now I just gotta go ahead and feed the bearings back into that guy. And then there's a little bolt that goes in there to cover it up. Then after that, it's pretty much done other than putting all of that back on there. But I will do that tomorrow because it's getting late tonight. You guys can tell it's kind of dark out there. So I'm trying to wrap things up so I can head home. All right, so I got all the bearings in place and I don't recommend doing this, but I can't find my ratchet right now. So we're gonna go ahead and tighten this Zerg fitting with an impact, but we're gonna do it very gently. Let's see, is that good? I don't feel it impeding on anything. All right, so pretty much everything's back together. I still need to tighten that up. We're not gonna worry about it right now. But as you guys can see, we are looking good. It does spin. Feels pretty snug, not too bad. I think we're good. I'm gonna go ahead and set the cover on here so nothing gets too crazy. We don't get any animals down in there. And we're gonna call it a night. I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, well, I think today is the big day where the mower deck actually goes back to work. It's obviously a mess right now. I'm gonna have to clean all that up. We're gonna have to get the baler disconnected. But let me go ahead and show you guys something real quick. The output shaft that we did the work on, this thing sat for about 10 hours and it's got no leaks. It's looking good. It's holding the gear oil that we dumped in there last night. So I think we're gonna be good. So first up on the list is I gotta get this all cleaned up. Then we're gonna be doing a little bit more work on that disc. I wanna do 2 more welds around it. So if you guys remember, it had a massive crack around this piece right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up and do 2 more welds. Make sure that this piece does not come off because our 4-foot mower deck was out working and that center piece completely broke off. So I really don't want that to happen to this one. We're gonna try and avoid that. We're gonna beef it up just a little bit more. And then after that, we'll just throw it all back together and hopefully get some work done. So we're gonna do one that grabs from this half, goes halfway up to the center, then we're gonna grab halfway up this piece of stock right here and come back down. So basically have 2 uniform passes that come all the way around this piece of center stock. I'm definitely more confident in the welds that are surrounding this thing right now. I don't think I'm gonna be as worried that the center piece is just gonna rip out like it did on the 4-foot one. So while we let this thing cool off, I did find one more problem. They just seem to be stacking up on this thing. The center piece right here, you guys can see that we have a very hairline crack right here on this side. So I'm gonna go ahead and grind that out. We're gonna re-weld this while it's off. And then fingers crossed that that's the last repair that we have to make because I really wanna get this thing on the ground, hooked up to the John Deere and cutting some weeds. All right, so everything's all welded up. It's looking pretty good. I went ahead and ground out like way down in there so it was like actually intruding into all of this. So that way when I weld it, I could go ahead and grind it smooth so we're not gonna have any rubbing issues. You guys can kind of see it's got like a nice little radius to it. So while we wait for that to cool down, I'm gonna go ahead and finish cleaning off the mower deck because I got my neighbor coming over because I do have one question. When I put it all together, it was feeling just a little bit on the tight side, but there was no way to adjust it. There was no way to shim it. And I think shims would actually just make it worse. So I want to get his opinion on it before I button everything up, put the disc back up there, put the blades on. And basically what I want to see is that if he thinks that this is too tight and it should rotate easier. So I'm kind of just wasting time until he gets here. All right, well, things are coming along pretty good. We got the back wheel installed. You guys can see we got some nice fresh grease in there. She does spin freely, and the wheel rotates okay. I think my neighbor Earl's just pulling up.
Well, what do you think?
I mean, it's snug, but I think it's okay.
Watch out, don't do that. That'll hurt.
And it's all the bottom one, but there's no adjustment on it.
So you spun that shaft without this one?
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'd run it.
Yeah.
Did you assemble the bearings with grease? Mm-hmm. You dressed up the input shaft, and you used the same amount of shims on this, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, one less.
One less. So that will tighten it up.
Yeah. Let me dig in the trash here a little bit.
Well, they should face the opposite direction.
Yeah, they do.
Same.
No,
yeah.
no. On the top, they're like this.
Mm-hmm.
On the output shaft, they're
like that.
They're
That's
like
right.
that.
Yeah. So the upper cone, where is it? It's seated in a boss in here.
Yeah, it's about right here.
And then the other one is seated down below, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So there is, and you seated them all the way into their base.
Yep.
15.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So there's.
And the only thing that holds them in place, you got the output shaft that comes through,
Mm-hmm.
and then you put the gear on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then a washer and that's it.
And the washer is what holds it from up and down.
Uh-huh.
So after you run it a bit and it warms up once, the bearings may shift a hair, just a hair.
Okay.
And it could feel a lot different.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
Gonna go ahead and hit this with a file real quick. Get those grooves cleaned out. All right, well, after consulting with my neighbor, I think we're ready to put this thing back together. So he did suggest a couple things that I probably would not have done had he not come by. He highly suggested put some anti-seize around the output shaft on that thing and put a little bit right here so that we do not have a repeat of when we tried to take this thing apart and I just fought with it. So hopefully we'll reduce the chances of that happening again. Not that I plan on taking this thing apart anytime soon, but should we need to replace the seal, in case I did anything incorrectly, it's not gonna be a bear to get this thing off. And then one more thing before we put this up, we're gonna go ahead and paint it. I found this can of purple Rust-Oleum. I don't know what I bought purple paint for, but I imagine it'll prohibit rust just the same as black paint. So we're gonna go ahead and blast this off. Look at that flawless paint job. Whew. This thing is heavy. Okay. Whew. All right. Okay, hasn't fallen on me yet, so that's a good sign. We're gonna go ahead and crank that thing down. We'll go ahead and give it a few ugga-duggas just to snug it up. Okay. Now it's time to see if these new blades we picked up are actually gonna work. New hardware. These are gonna stay up top. Oh, you guys, I got the wrong ones! Oh, man. Dang it. Well, that sucks a lot. Stay put, you. Let's see. All right, don't got to worry about that one falling off anymore. All right, well, we've got everything situated. I went ahead and got them snugged up. They are not torqued into spec yet. But just look at this big, beautiful torque wrench. I've looked at that thing so many times in the Snap-on van, and I can just never bring myself to buy one. But today would have been a good day to have one. Anyways, let me go ahead and get these things torqued down, then it's done. We're ready to put on the tractor. I'll be honest, I'm surprised that nut and bolt are still holding strong. Ooh, that's getting snug. We gotta be getting close. go. So just about done. There was one last thing that I had to do, and that was cut off a little bit of this PTO shaft. You guys remember from the last video on this thing, taking this apart was kind of a bear. The drive shaft was actually just a little bit too long. And if you guys look real close, you might be able to see the lines right there. Basically, this whole assembly was being pushed back too far. So I think this little 2-inch piece is gonna be enough. I just have to push this in just a little bit more. Let's see if we can get it to click. Gonna have to use a hammer. Give me 1 second. Ended up taking me way longer to get this thing working than I wanted to. I think it was in here for almost 4 weeks. But between the output shaft being all boogered up, having to hook up the lathe to get it working, there's just a lot of stuff that had to happen. So anyhow, let's get this thing lifted up. We'll get this dragged out of the way and we'll pull in the John Deere. Hear a sad story?
What's that?
I bought the wrong blade. Starting to think this day would never come, but here we are. We got the mower hooked up. Everything's been adjusted nicely. I could probably get some different bushings right here, but we're not gonna worry about that today. Got the PTO hooked up. We got this adjusted. Everything's looking pretty good. This is kind of high. I'm not 100% sure why that thing kicks down so far. Kind of puts it at a weird angle, but I'm not gonna judge right now. We're just gonna go cut some weeds. We're gonna see how this thing actually works. So let's cross our fingers that nothing goes wrong and that I put it back together correctly. And we got a nice working unit again. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and do a quick functions test before we actually start testing anything. So let's go ahead and turn the PTO on. All right. Okay. Feeling pretty smooth, not a whole lot of vibration. That's what we're going for. That 4-foot brush cutter that we had, that thing shakes all over the place. So this one, as you guys can tell, is pretty well balanced. It's got a little shimmy to it, but nothing too bad. I think we're gonna be all right. Yeah, it's pretty good. Just gonna go ahead and take a quick peek underneath there, make sure everything's looking pretty good. All right, you guys can see that both blades are flipped out. That's what we want. They're not bound up in the center. So the last thing to do is go cut some weeds. Let's go. All right, so we made it up front. You guys can see that we got a little bit of growth right here. I hit that probably about 2 weeks ago. It's just some mustard weed that popped back up. But over to this side, we got some serious growth. So I'm gonna go ahead and start over here, see how it does, and then if it's doing pretty good, we'll move into the thicker stuff over there. I can already tell that it's running way, way smoother than it used to. That gearbox used to just howl like crazy. And another thing that's working better than it used to is that rear wheel right there. You guys can see how it's tracking pretty smooth. We're gonna see how it does right now going around this turn. Beautiful, that's exactly what we want. As soon as we started going straight, it just got straight back in line. Whereas before, it couldn't decide what it wanted to do, and it usually just ended up dragging behind the mower. So I think it's safe to say that everything's working pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in third gear and see if it trims as nicely as it does as it is right now, because right now we're just in second, and we're just kind of cruising along. Seems to be knocking the mustard weed down pretty good, which is like the most stubborn weed we have out here. So I'm gonna go ahead and go over to the thicker stuff and see how it does against that. in third gear. It knocked it down pretty good, but I think if I put it into second, it would give it a little bit more time to cut it up. I'm gonna do a pass through here in second gear and see how it does. It makes much of a difference if I'm in second or third gear, so I'm gonna go ahead and put it back into third gear. We're gonna get some work done. I'm gonna try and get all this mowed down and get that little area cleaned off too. All right, well, the brush cutter is just running great. I wish I had more time today to go ahead and finish these fields. I'm gonna have to do it tomorrow because we got some prior commitments and I gotta get going. So I'm gonna run this thing down to the shop. All right, we just pulled back into the shop. We're gonna give it a quick once over. Everything's looking pretty good. The old bolts still seem to be holding in place. This thing spins pretty freely now. I don't really feel any resistance. So I think those bearings are nice and seated now. And I think we're gonna be okay. The overall operation of this thing was so much smoother than it used to be. That was something that was long overdue. So I'm pretty pumped to have another implement up and working. We're gonna go ahead and set this one back down. All right, well, I'm gonna put the screws in this video because like I said, we gotta get going. But I'm getting pretty excited because a lot of these old attachments are starting to come back to life. The next one that we're gonna be bringing in here is the sickle style mower or cutter. I'm not 100% sure what it's called, but it's the one that you're supposed to use to cut for hay because it basically just cuts it once and lays it down. But as far as attachments go, that's probably gonna be the next project after I button this one up. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you could do me a huge solid, like, subscribe, share this with your amigos, hit that notification button down below so you guys can continue to see progress with whatever else we got going on, and I will see you guys next time. Later.